March 14th of 2018 is where my story begins. This was the day of the National Student School Walkout, where students from all across the country protested the ongoing gun violence that occurs every day in the United States. My fellow classmates and I walked out of our classrooms and made calls to representatives. These calls consisted of us stating our name and the demands that we would like to see taken to mitigate the threat plaguing our schools. For a lot of individuals, this is just a very simple service. It's a minor interruption in your coursework to create change. But for me, it wasn't so simple. I like to think of myself as a really good student. I had great grades, I was in a ton of clubs, and I was even on the student council. But it wasn't until I was in a room with my principal signing a suspension paper that I began to question who I was as a student and whether or not I had rights in school. Now, you see, one of the representative aides that I spoke with on the phone called my school and said that I spoke inappropriately, which was enough of a reason to get me suspended and stripped of my position on student council. I was devastated. I remember going home crying because who I was a student. And to think about all of the effort that I put into that school to just get suspended. And I never even had a detention prior to that. For a bit of context, when I care deeply about something, I might say a word or two that aren't the most appropriate. Yes. I said the F word. No, the word was not filibuster or finance fraud, but it was the F word, the big one, the queen mother of dirty words, the F dash 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 word. Now I get it, I could have said something a little bit differently, but at the end of the day, I didn't. And because of who I am, I couldn't just accept being suspended over such a minor offense, especially considering two things. The first being, if you've ever stepped foot in a high school, you've heard worse things. Let's just be honest. And the second reason is that we use our anger and frustration to voice our opinion over such needless death, the fact that children are dying in hallways of their schools. So we should be able to use these words, especially when we're frustrated. And it's really no surprise that students live in fear of being punished for speaking up about their beliefs. Whether it be students today or students years ago, we've constantly been having to fight. A pretty good example of this is with the court case Tinker versus Des Moines. This court case goes all the way back to February of 1969, and it consisted of students wearing black armbands to signify an end to the Vietnam War. And as you can see, these individuals weren't really distracting. It was just something that they wore to sort of signify an end to that war. And the principal didn't really view it that way. The principal said, you all should get suspended. So they all got suspended. And these individuals were questioning why they got suspended. They thought that they had rights in school. They thought that they were able to speak their minds freely. So their small court case eventually made it all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled on a 7-2 decision on behalf of the students. This was an amazing thing. It set a precedent for students' rights. It shows that students have voices, that when you step on your school grounds, your rights don't just dissipate, but rather you still have your voice. And these individuals set a precedent for people like me today. So fast forward to my situation, I ended up calling the American Civil Liberties Union. And because like the students in Tinker versus Des Moines, I felt that something was very, very off about my suspension. So I ended up meeting with a lot of lawyers. And these lawyers sat me down and they asked me every small detail. What did your principal say to you? How did they treat you when you were in that office? What did you exactly say? And of course, I answered all of these questions. And then in a matter of hours, my local newspaper published some small little thing about my situation. And I didn't really think much about it until I saw articles from the LA Times, New York Times, Huffington Post, and CNN that I began to realize that it's kind of a big deal. And as all of you can kind of see, this flattering image of me will forever be online. I was now part of this narrative. This narrative consisted not just of students like me, but of students all across the nation. You probably have heard of students like David Hogg, Emma Gonzalez, Cameron Caskey, and others who all sort of led and created something called a March for Our Lives. This march was to protest against this ongoing gun violence. And these students eventually made it on the cover of Time magazine. And I really like the word, enough. Because enough is enough. One school shooting is too much. I was inspired by these students, which allowed me to go out and want to talk about gun violence and to call my representatives and to walk out of my classroom. And they created the March for Our Lives, so I always just wanted to participate, but it was really amazing and incredible when the city organizers of the march asked me to lead it. So that's what I did. It was an incredibly amazing experience just looking out into a sea of people, thousands of people, and telling them my story, how I think that we can help mitigate gun violence in the United States. And the craziest part about all of this is that people were listening to me, a high schooler, someone who had been suspended. So for the sake of this speech, I just put in a little screenshot of it, and as, again, all of you can see, a flattering image of me yelling into a microphone will also forever be on the internet. Now, afterwards, I had people walk up to me. They were asking me questions. How do you think that we can help mitigate the problem? Some had me sign stuff, which was kind of cool, I guess. And then other people had a picture of me on their protest signs. And some of the most emotional experiences I've really ever had was when people were crying to me on my shoulder about a person that they had lost to gun violence. It gave me a moment of clarity, I should say. It gave me a moment of clarity because I began to realize that this whole movement consists of people who support it, even though they don't even really know me. They were asking me questions, even though this is the first time they had even heard about me. Now, it's not just students like me. Like I said, it's also students from Parkland. And we as individuals continue to move forward. So just because I made, some national news and I helped lead a march, I still had to get that suspension off of my back, and I had to get my position on student council back. So I kept moving and pushing forward. After I had served my suspension, I went back to school. I remember sitting in class one day when I got called down to the office. So of course, I'm nervous, I'm walking down, I'm like, which representative did I call today? What word did I say? And I ended up going to the office and I said, okay, what's the deal? And they handed me a stack of envelopes. So I was very confused. I put these in my backpack and waited until I got home. And I got home and I opened these envelopes and they were from people all across the country. People from New York and LA, and people who were telling me about how much of a leader I am and how much of an inspiration I was to them. So I have a couple of them and a couple lines that I really like. A law office from Los Angeles said, "You're the kind of leader that we need right now. While you're on your suspension, get yourself something nice at Starbucks." And then they threw in a gift card. That coffee was really good. And then another individual said, they wrote my representative a letter and then sent that letter to me. So they said, "I was disturbed to read in the news about you getting a student suspended because you did not like what he said. You are a representative in a state where the worst mass shooting occurred, 58 people dead and 500 injured. I have given my information below in case you want to get me suspended too." These letters gave me hope, and I ended up calling these individuals and asking them, "Why did you send me a letter? You don't even know who I am. You don't know who I am as a person or anything. You just read some news article." And they told me, "Well, in the midst of all the hate that you've been getting, it's sometimes nice just to go grab a drink at Starbucks and relax." And I agree with that. And I was truly thinking about that because while people may have read an article about me in the news, they didn't understand the massive amount of hate that I was getting in my DMs, in my private messages, things like that. People were calling me ugly. People were calling me unintelligent. They said I looked like I had a mental illness. People were telling me and sending me pictures of their firearms, asking if I was scared of them. And this isn't just a singular incident. This was people repeatedly doing this, and different people that were young, that weren't even of the age of 18, showing me pictures of guns that they had, and people who were even in their 40s asking and telling me if we wanted to meet up so we could square up. So I was really confused as to all of this, and it really beat me down a lot. I remember going home just like, I hate all of this hate that I've been getting. But getting letters like this inspired me. It pushed me to move forward. But it wasn't just letters like this. It was emails that were given to my school. So the Huffington Post later released another article about all of the emails that people had sent to the school. So I put a couple of them in here right now. Because that's not working, I'll just read off the screen. The First Amendment allows anyone to exercise it. A public official withers at a word spoken by a student to a staff member, and I like this word, how quaint. Thought that was kind of professional. And then this individual, a professor, said, why don't you care? It is rather clear where the leadership resides in your district among the students themselves. Mr. Christiansen's application to Columbia University more or less writes itself. And I wanted to include this one because I truly feel that someone in the education system standing up for me is truly incredible. It was someone who engages with students on a day-to-day basis, someone that wants to talk about the issue of gun violence and who's willing to write an email to a school. And this person I also really like. They said, I ask that you imagine yourself in the shoes of a parent who lost a child to gun violence at the school in Parkland, Florida. If we do not allow our young people to take a stand for the things that they believe in, that most people believe in, then what are we teaching them? We are teaching them that their voice doesn't matter. So these are just a couple of the dozens of emails that people sent to the school. And these gave me hope. It allowed me to keep moving forward. It pushed me to want to be a better advocate because people who didn't even know me were standing up for me, which is truly incredible. Eventually, the school published a letter that you can find online that says Mr. Christiansen's suspension has been overturned. And he gets his position back on student council. I was like, this is amazing. I got it back. This is all that I wanted. It was something that I was working so hard to get. It was incredible having that feeling, but people would ask me, well, what now? Like, you got it back. Like, you got your position back. You know, your suspension's off your record. What are you going to do? And I paused because I was really thinking about this. And I realized that this wasn't just a one-time event for me, but rather it lit a fire underneath me where I wanted to keep going. It was something that now I want to be a better advocate. I want to stand up for more individuals. I want to keep fighting in this fight. But at the end of the day, this fight may include a punishment. But that's the reason as to why we protest. We know that we might get in trouble sometime. So we want to keep moving forward and pushing through that. So for all of the students in the room, know your rights. Tinker versus Des Moines shows us that we have rights in school, that when we step onto school grounds, our rights don't just disappear. We still are able to speak freely, that we have political freedom, that we have the political expression to talk about threats plaguing our schools. And even if you do get in trouble, you can do what I did. Call the American Civil Liberties Union. Be able to talk to someone. Be able to talk to a lawyer and ask them, did they violate my rights? If you are unclear. And then you can continue to push and move forward. There are dozens of examples of student leaders, such as Greta Thunberg's climate movement, putting pressure on politicians to pass successful environmental policies. You can look at the Hong Kong student protesters fighting for their democracy every single day. You can also look at a video of a girl on TikTok who did a makeup video, but the makeup video also was spreading awareness about the China persecuting Muslims in their country. Or you can do what the Parkland students did, like I referenced earlier. You can lead a march. You can call your representatives. You can write letters to your representatives. You can share a message, because at the end of the day, it might be fun to go on Facebook or Twitter and be like, you're wrong. But that doesn't really do anything, because at the end of the day, it probably just makes you more upset. All of the people that were threatening me didn't really get anywhere, because look at where I am today. See, so by being able to push past that hate, push past that punishment, you as an individual can create the change necessary and engage. Now, for all of the adults in the room, you should be willing to listen. And I understand that you have a lot of years of experience. Trust me, my parents tell me all the time. But we still have a voice too, because the difference when I grow up and the difference when you grew up is that I have to do shooter preparedness drills. I've had to push tables in front of doors. I have had to hide in closets. I've had to do these things, and it's really sad because I have younger siblings and they have to do these things too, whether it be in elementary, middle, and high school, and even in college. So we all should listen to one another's opinion, and everyone has one. So maybe we should listen. Thank you.